Let me welcome you to my channel. Before we begin the video, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and like this post. The recent encounter between Rhea Ripley and Solo Sikoa on WWE Raw has been a hot topic in the wrestling industry, and the storyline opportunities for the business are the interminable, adorable Buddy Matthews could go back to work for the firm to help assist his actual business partner, the Bloodline, on Monday night and the Day of Judgment, airing a fortnight ago. Roman Reigns, as Paul Heyman disclosed, had negotiated and authorized a contract pitting the two evil groups against one another to mutually benefit one another. The sages said that Sikoa alone could handle Rey Mysterio and Bad Bunny for Judgment Day, as Finn Balor and his gang must ensure Sammy's well-being. Dear Zayn, Puzzle, and Kevin Owens, while advertising Bloodline's enforcer Rhea Ripley, confronted each other as the audiences be overjoyed if this marks the start of conflict between opposing factions continuing. My friend Matthews, who is the trio's champion, may be possible terror still looms, was afraid to engage in personal contact with members of the roster, and the likelihood that there will be a physical showdown competing against the women's champion of SmackDown. And my lone Sikoa companion, Matthews, is coming back, going to the WWE to rescue his partner, up the stakes in the rivalry, and provide thrilling in-ring action to the audience. Seeing as how the famous Australian is very gifted WWE wrestler, Rhea received feedback from veteran Vince Russo, along with Ripley. One-on-one time with the Ocean Lead is confronted by Sikoa and the Eradicator. To much debate among them, conflict resolution. Vince Russo, a former writer for WWE on Community, offered the following feedback on the matter. Own the ancestral line and own the USOs. We stood in a row and were given a verdict. On the other side, Dave was lined up, and there, with their backs to one another, Sarah Ripley is glaring at her own Sikoa to Chris. It was Rhea Ripley's 50th birthday was not long ago, with each and every female player on the team. That's my point, whether you're right or incorrect. Discussing this ridiculous business on a more informal admirer, and while I watch this, I'm thinking, what if China was in the place? And it's one item, however, China did not engage in a balanced approach with. God forbid we have a Chelsea Green. That's exactly what I'm referring about, my friend. They seem to have forgotten everything. That all was done in order for Rhea Ripley to be not dangerous to Solo Sikoa. From 1525 until 1640, the outcome is uncertain if a transgender match will go forward in WWE couples match, because it is a very unusual occurrence as she stood there, Rhea Ripley, her self-assurance in the midst of the WWE ring stable as she presided over the Women's World Tour. Champion draped over her shoulder as the crowd let forth a cacophony of applause and boos and alcohol, yet Ripley flourished within mayhem that the Day of Judgment had set in motion. Authority, but rumors circulated that the group's cohesion wasn't as solid as seemed like it would happen eventually, prior to an individual offering to challenge Ripley, and this evening it appeared on the verge of an unavoidable showdown. As night fell, the arena's lights went off. The tune of the Samoan War, using use of the speakers as a Solo Sikoa motif, caused the audience to burst into. Who would have thought that the enforcer of the Bloodline, in order to announce his arrival, now, particularly with Roman Reigns in the mix, alone as a lone traveler, leisurely made their way down the ramp, his face remaining unwavering, was the same soloist who had devastatingly affected legends and ripped through WWE's set of players. But why did you want Ripley? Instead of flinching, Ripley stood firm, eyes narrowing in astonishment as one entered. The audience members felt the heat in the stadium as doubted the significance of this. Ripley, the standoff, grinned, pleased by Solo's remaining quiet. Terror, behold the one who chose to manifest. Curiously, Ripley said, "What? You couldn't manage the situation on your own. Difficulties caused by the descent of split up, so now you're on your own to get me." Standing up above Ripley, he kept quiet throughout. Unfaltering look that was the only got Ripley even more agitated, so she increased her. A leap forward, fiery eyes, acts of rebellion, regardless of your identity or how much your family has endured. Ripley persisted, her voice saturated with contempt. "But if you believe that you are capable of, come on in here and attempt to frighten me. If you're not prepared for the sting that lies ahead." At that moment, Solo's lip curled, his mouth into a grin as he reached for a microphone, booming voice echoing around the stadium. "It's unclear what you're signing up for. I know you're terrifying, Ripley, but it is I, not the mob, who puts a stop to them." Escalated into more than simply a conflict between position of power. It was the meeting of two, the formidable powers of WWE Percy, individual groups that were represented by their own varieties of mayhem, and this showdown included the possibility of revealing everything. But prior to any potential escalation of conflict going on, the lights began to flicker once again. The WWE Universe's gloomy mood changed, while sounding both familiar and enigmatic, whistled its way across. "What's wrong, speakers? Ripley is worried that you took on too much." The audience let out a gasp when a brilliant light from Titantron revealed the demon's form for over 2 years. Bray Wyatt's sick and sinister sidekick was not involved in WWE programming during his unexpected arrival stunned onlookers, but an even more disturbing aspect was the arena was followed by an eerie chuckle, placed against a disturbing crimson backdrop as the shadow of the monster danced over the digital display. A smug grin on Ripley's face temporarily stumbled and performed alone. Judged with a stooped posture, it is possible that Dave was a powerful force. However, Wyatt exhibited a distinct beast. Under his influence, he had played a great number of famous people who have departed, their screens cracked, bewildered, or even worse, turned to dark shade, but the harm was already done. Completed, anarchy began to take root, and this wasn't going to be an easy instance of somebody attempting to supremacy. The reappearance of Wyatt signified some shadowy aspect. Additional, he cocked his head to the side as twisted Solo. With a steady stare, "Ripley seems as if you has more pressing issues at the moment." Ripley withdrew her jaw as her heart pounded under. She had battled to maintain her calm demeanor. Prior to this, Wyatt was confined to league. However, she still wasn't able to. Can't afford to be timid while performing alone, with the WWE watching, of all things. "Hey there, universe. I'm worried about you." Frightened, she harangued as she advanced to narrow the gap between them in the event that, "Run away from the demon, please. I will not hold your hand until you ask me to." He let go of the microphone, unfazed, and retreated his position just as intimidating as always. Needless to mention, he then left the ring without saying anything more. Standing alone under the lights dimmed as Solo vanished. When the curtain came down, the stadium became quiet. Momentarily, as if the atmosphere had been, the space was evacuated and subsequently illuminated. Stepped out once again as a specter for kids, as the sound reverberated from the speakers. As soon as the lights came back on, the Fiend was taking a position behind Ripley. The crowd went into convulsions. Rip's detection. Nobody in her vicinity shifted. In the vicinity. Suddenly, instead, she grinned despite was more of an artificial smile that she adopted. Unexpectedly encountering Wyatt's frightful alter ego that made sensation of static like tightness on the ground, but Ripley, being herself, would not budge even after raising the women's championship trophy as if to indicate, "You, the cocked up monster, have no fear on my part." Gazing sideways at her, he had before, gently lifting a gloved hand to address the audience, braced for an assault, but instead, Demon did little more than tilt his head to the side, eyes fixed on, a slow, guttural chuckle from Ripley's lips. Noise that made everyone's skin crawl. Back at that moment, it didn't matter who was going to hit first, and the question was, would plunge headfirst into insanity.